Coming up on 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida. See how the Category 5 monster led to a new era in hurricane forecasting accuracy. Plus, mass migration, the phenomenon Andrew set in motion, impacting all of us through the eyes of one local family. And shelter from the storm, how the plan that protected these flamingos in a Zoo Miami bathroom became a blueprint to save lives the next time. Now, 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida.
Welcome and thank you for joining us. I'm Elliot Rodriguez.
And I'm Lauren Pastrana. It's a little hard to believe it's been 30 years since Hurricane Andrew ravaged our community. It was the storm that changed South Florida in so many ways. Over
the next half hour, we're going to take a look at how it changed us. But first, a look back. You never forget the sound of the howling wind on the morning Hurricane Andrew made landfall. The Cat 5 storm flattened Homestead in Florida City and brought widespread destruction to Perrine, Kendall, and other parts of South Miami-Dade. The day after the storm hit, I reported on damage the likes of which I had never seen before. Homestead Air Force Base was leveled, mobile home parks destroyed, communities like Country Walk wiped out.
There's absolutely no way to describe what it's like to see your house in pieces.
My colleague Al Sunshine survived by hiding in a closet. He woke up to find his home destroyed.
Where in the hell is the cavalry on this one?
Miami-Dade's Emergency Operations Director, Kate Hale, got national attention when she called for the cavalry. Soon, 12,000 National Guard troops were in South Florida. FEMA set up a tent city in Homestead. Life was tough, and it would remain that way for a long time to come.
What we're trying to do is help people.
In the midst of the chaos, President Bush came, promising more federal relief. Neighbors turned out to help one another, a movement that sparked the creation of what is now Neighbors for Neighbors. The storm prompted changes to building codes and hurricane insurance policies still impacting South Florida today. For those of us who lived it, the howling wind is forever a reminder of how Hurricane Andrew changed our lives. Since Andrew, advances in technology allow for much better storm forecasting.
Next weather, Chief Meteorologist and Hurricane Specialist Ivan Cabrera has been forecasting storms for decades and has seen accuracy improve dramatically. Ivan joins us now.
And Ivan, the improvements have had far-reaching impact.
Absolutely. Things have changed just incredibly here in the last 30 years. Technology, as you would expect. In 1992, all we had as far as information getting back to us from Andrew, we had a plane that went in at 10,000 feet. That was all it was able to do, pierce through the clouds and get us some limited data back. The computing power, as you can imagine, back in 1992 was not quite there. It is certainly a whole different ballgame now with the amount of computing power we have, and also the additional planes we have in, some flying directly over the hurricane, some going in, and the drop zones, we call them, right? These probes that get launched into the hurricane bring back just incredible amounts of data at just lightning speed. And so what happens is the models are able to take that real time and adjust the forecast. We don't have to wait 12, 24 hours. This is happening continuously as all that data continues to come back. We can also now talk about, wow, how changed are these satellites here? This is just incredible. It's like going from, black and white TV, standard TV, to high resolution 4K. These have the capacity now to basically float over a hurricane or any tropical system and not just look at it, it's the pictures we see back, but penetrate through the different layers and give us information that is critical to be able to have a more accurate forecast. Whereas before we had this kind of wide scope, now we can really kind of focus in and talk specifically about what that hurricane is doing. We push that information back to the models and they can spit out a well more accurate forecast than what we've been used to here. In fact, in 1992, we only had a 3-day cone. As you know, we have a 5-day cone now, and the information that comes out as far as the accuracy over at least 24 hours from the initial point is incredible. In fact, over 50% more accurate. The cone is getting skinnier. That's the point there. And the imagery has gone from, well, what we had with Andrew, of course, take a look at this, to Hurricane Dorian. The imagery there, obviously you can see the different kind of cloud tops. This is how far up in the atmosphere they are. And we can analyze with some of those satellites how much lightning is occurring under the storm as well. And that gives us an idea of whether it's intensifying, weakening, and that, of course, allows us to, on the fly, adjust the forecast.
Very impressive.
Yeah, just incredible to see that comparison of the technology. And it's clear that hurricane forecasting has evolved at a rapid pace over the past 30 years. What would you like to see different to even improve that forecasting?
Right,
What's
so
next?
getting data back. We're going to get new satellites up, and that's always a good thing. In fact, NASA and some of the scientists, so we look at the discussions, they're discovering things that these satellites can do they didn't even know they could and were designed for. And so I think we're good with the technology. We need information back more frequently from these areas so that we can improve the forecast.
Ivan, thank you. See you later in this half hour.
A remarkable way Hurricane Andrew left its mark on South Florida was in the mass migration it prompted. In the 12 months after Andrew, Broward County saw the quickest growth in its history. Hundreds of thousands of South Dade residents who were suddenly homeless moved north, primarily to Broward's southwest and western neighborhoods. CBS 4's Peter Dench has the story of one family who was among them.
That was probably one of the most scariest moments in my experiences.
Sherry and Chuck Heyman were inside their southwest Miami-Dade home when Hurricane Andrew leveled it and destroyed or damaged more than 125,000 other homes.
We thought maybe our mailbox would blow over. We never, ever could have imagined to be in a situation like this. And back in the day, there were no hurricane shutter requirements. There were no storm windows or anything. And, we thought we would be safe in our house.
They lived a mile southwest of Country Walk.
It sounded like freight trains going through our house.
Then the windows started to pop and break from the pressure. So we grabbed Nicole, our newborn baby, and went into our walk-in closet. Unbeknownst to us, above the closet was a crawl space. That cover blew off and all the insulation fell on us and our newborn baby.
They ran to their garage and spent 3 hours there.
And then when we opened the door from the garage to our house, it was an unbelievable sight. Every interior wall was blown out. Every stud was sheared in half, and the roof blew off.
The Heymans, who were elementary school teachers, moved north to a family home in Palm Beach and then rented an apartment in Coral Springs.
We just took basically the shirts off our back. Sherry grabbed her jewelry. That's it. We didn't take anything else.
I insisted that we leave. There was no water. A lot of people in our community stayed. They wanted to protect their property, their belongings. For me, all I cared about was our daughter and the safety of my newborn baby.
9 months after Andrew, the Heymans moved back into their rebuilt home, and then after 4 years, moved to Weston, where they lived for 23 years before moving to Boynton Beach. They were part of a population shift after Hurricane Andrew. By 2001, 230,710 people had moved from Miami-Dade to Broward.
They started flocking to Pembroke Pines. We started out almost 6,000 people coming every month to Pembroke Pines. We were the third fastest growing city in the nation. We went from approximately 40,000 people to now our current 171,000 people.
Chuck and Sherry Heyman are now both retired with unforgettable memories of Andrew and lessons that prepared them forever for hurricane seasons. In Pembroke Pines, Peter Dench, CBS 4 News.
Are you old enough to remember where you were when Andrew came calling? Next, weather meteorologist Lisette Gonzalez was born and raised here in South Florida and rode out the storm with her family in southwest Miami-Dade. She recently went back to remember and reflect.
I will never forget it. I was in high school at the time, and we rode out the storm right here in my parents' home, where they still live, in the Village Green community in southwest Miami-Dade County. When Andrew rapidly intensified and started to head towards Miami-Dade County, we did the best we could to prepare, but we could have never imagined the monster that Hurricane Andrew would turn out to be. And the worst part is that the eye moved through overnight when we had lost power, we were in the dark. And basically, once we knew we had to hunker down and head into the most interior room and the wind started to roar like a freight train, it was so eerie, it was so scary. We were holding up a mattress and just basically listening to meteorologist Brian Norcross on the radio. He guided us through the storm. Once Andrew passed and we were able to go outside and assess the damage in the morning, we had some shingles that had fallen off the roof, there was flooding, there were power lines and trees down everywhere. However, nothing in comparison to the devastation and the destruction across other parts of Miami-Dade County, especially southern Miami-Dade County. Neighborhoods like Cutler Ridge and Country Walk and Homestead were completely flattened and unrecognizable. It was heartbreaking. However, in the aftermath, as we saw people come together to help each other out, it was really moving and inspiring to see how we were able to rebuild our community. Now, because of Andrew, our perspective on hurricanes was forever changed. I know that I could never see a tropical threat the same way again because I witnessed and experienced firsthand the wrath and the power of Hurricane Andrew and how catastrophic it could be. And this is the reason why I take an even greater responsibility in helping to prepare and protect our viewers whenever we do see any kind of threat from a tropical storm or a hurricane. And whenever the anniversary of Andrew comes around, I think it serves as a reminder for all of us that it only takes one, and we can never let our guard down.
When 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida continues, it became an iconic photo. Zoo Miami flamingos gathered in a public restroom. It's now designed to save even more lives. South Florida neighbors helping neighbors. It began as a phone bank inside our building in Andrew's aftermath. How neighbors evolved to be so much more today. And back to Andrew's ground zero. A blank slate ripe for rebuilding. A look at South Dade then and now. We'll be right back. This is 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida.
Welcome back. 12 years after Andrew wreaked havoc here, hurricane forecasting accuracy had already improved. That was a good thing, considering how active the 2004 storm season was for southern Florida.
If you were living here then, Charlie, Francis, and Jean are three names hard to forget. Let's check back now with next weather chief meteorologist and hurricane specialist Ivan Cabrera.
Advances in technology obviously are going to help our forecast here, but the storms are still going to hit. We're just trying to get better at pinpointing when that happens. I want to take you back to 2004, absolutely, because you can see all these lines going through the state of Florida. We had multiple hurricane landfalls. In fact, we had two major hurricanes making landfall on either coast, and this season really changed, I think, how we perceive these storms, particularly Charlie, as it came roaring ashore across the southwestern part of the state. There's Bonnie, tropical storm, dumped a lot of heavy rainfall, but that was about it with Bonnie. Charlie, of course, was the one that we all remember here. Now, the deal with Charlie is we had a 150-mile-an-hour Category 4 hurricane. Yes, there was a line that was going through Tampa, but the entire western coast here was under a hurricane warning, which is why we always say don't focus on the line, because the forecast errors were there and certainly were met, but you can see there it made that last-minute move towards Orlando, and of course those folks lost power for weeks at a time. Then the twins, right? Francis and Jean, incredibly, 21 days apart. 3 weeks apart, we had a Category 2 storm and then a Category 3 storm, both with extensive damage, 105-mile-an-hour winds, and Jean making landfall within 2 miles of Francis, incredibly, at 120 miles an hour. So despite the fact that we can have a busy season or, you know, something a little bit less intense as far as the names, just takes one, as we always say. Guys?
Thanks, Ivan. You would expect neighborhoods, towns, and cities to change after 30 years, but Hurricane Andrew's path of destruction sped up that process to just hours. The area was a blank slate, ready to be recreated. CBS 4's Hank Tester takes a look at South Miami-Dade then and now.
South Dade, growth from the air, thousands of new homes in the last 2 decades. Such a contrast to this, the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew, August 24th, 1992.
We lost roughly 60% of our tax base in a period of 4.5 hours.
Otis Wallace, mayor of Florida City for 38 years, can now take a longer view of that day 30 years ago.
We had some instant urban renewal. There are some places that needed to go, not the people, but the structures were antiquated and needed to go. Well, Andrew took care of a lot of that.
Buildings could be repaired, replaced, but what of the people? What became of the hometown feel of an agricultural-based economy enhanced by a strong military presence?
What, are you rebuilding the whole car? You're going to rebuild the whole car? Oh, yeah.
Kevin Peterson's family went through the whole Andrew experience. So did his employees.
Broke down the doors. All the doors came down. And the lifts, even the lifts were spinning. Remember that? The lifts were spinning.
Peterson got the business up and running, but noticed change.
It was still tough to run this business because there wasn't as many people in town.
Many folks cashed out and left destroyed homes and businesses, but the major change maker, the loss of 7,000 jobs.
The loss of Homestead Air Force Base is a full active duty base. They were gone overnight.
Rebuilt as a reserve base.
In terms of local economic impact and number of folks out there, it doesn't begin to compare with what we had pre-Andrew.
The quaint downtown withered as rebuilding and development over the past 30 years occurred east of town, across the turnpike. A whole new crowd of folks moved in, many with jobs in the Miami area who
saw opportunity to get a new house here that they couldn't get somewhere else.
We lost so much of our brick and mortar history, so many of the mom and pop businesses.
In the wake of Andrew, a much more urbanized South Miami-Dade, downtown Homestead, though being redeveloped, does not have the charm and buzz it once had pre-Andrew, as urban sprawl gobbled up farmlands. Suburbia came to South Miami-Dade. It has been an amazing comeback, but the folks that live down this way will tell you they miss the mom and pop stores, the hometown atmosphere, much of which was blown away August 24th, 1992. In South Dade, I'm Hank Tester, CBS 4 News.
When Hurricane Andrew struck South Florida, next weather meteorologist Jennifer Correa was looking forward to her first day of kindergarten. Jennifer and her family rode out Andrew in their Kendall home, something she still remembers.
This is how my childhood home looked like the day after Hurricane Andrew. And this is what it looks like now. And I'm gonna date myself right now. I was 5 years old, so yes, I was young, but it was a traumatic experience as a kid. I'm sure a lot of kids that grew up in Kendall could say the same thing. A lot of my friends, my age that I grew up with, experienced Hurricane Andrew. And the one thing that scared me during the storm was the sound. I could not sleep at all. And it was really scary. I remember keeping my hands over my ears almost the entire time. But what scared me the most was hearing things hit the outside of the house, like the walls. And take a look at this. We actually used tape for the windows. This is obviously a no-no. Now we know after Andrew that doesn't help. In fact, we used in most of the windows except the sliding door. Well, that actually had plywood. There's the plywood. The plywood was completely ripped off. Some of the smaller windows, thankfully not the sliding door, but some of the smaller windows did explode and shattered. Also, the sound of like a train constantly passing by. It was those strong winds that were just blowing so hard. This photo is really impressive. I think this one is pretty shocking, actually. My dad took this on top of the roof of our house. And so this is our surrounding neighbors. Look at the damage. You can tell roofs completely gone, shingles, trees completely bent over and uprooted. Hurricane Andrew afterwards really shaped my interest as a kid in developing an interest in the atmosphere, earth science, and space science. So I would say that Hurricane Andrew definitely also had a positive impact in that aspect. of shaping my life and my interests and eventually becoming a meteorologist.
You're watching 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida. What if a storm like Andrew was to impact South Miami-Dade today? With the help of our state-of-the-art technology, we'll show you what might happen. Plus, you could say Andrew's legacy was the birth of Neighbors for Neighbors. We'll share some of the amazing things Neighbors has accomplished since 1992, and how protecting some of Zoo Miami's most vulnerable residents in a public restroom laid the groundwork to potentially save lives there today. That's all coming up. You're watching 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida.
Welcome back. We've been looking at the many ways Andrew changed South Florida.
We wanted to know what might be the impact if a storm like Andrew hit that South Dade area now.
Here's next weather meteorologist Dave Warren.
Well, what could a storm like Andrew do today? Well, here's the track 1992 right through Homestead, Miami-Dade. Population has changed since then. The census every 10 years. 1990, Miami-Dade and Broward, 3.2 million, a 44% increase now to 4.6 million people as of 2020. Sea level rise, that continues to increase. The rate plus 1.4 millimeters per year. That's up to 1992. Then 93 to 2017, the rates increased. So a higher ocean, a warmer ocean can lead to bigger problems with storm surge. That's the water being pushed inland there with a storm. When you have warmer water, you have more fuel for storms. When you have a higher sea level, that makes the storm surges worse. Those are impacts and factors that we have to watch. Now, the sea level or storm surge risk really goes up as you get into southern Miami-Dade, right through Andrew, where Andrew tracks. So a different track could lead to slightly different impacts. As well as that, we have stronger building codes, plus the sea level rise and the storm size and speed. You have to take that into consideration when you look at impacts from a storm. Andrew was small, intense, and moving pretty quickly. Slower moving storm might have bigger impacts. Looking at the numbers, $25 billion in 92 adjusted to today, 55.9. The thought is when you look at impacts from a storm like Andrew, should it happen today, 70 to $100 billion is the estimated damage from a storm like Andrew happening today.
When local officials called for help from the cavalry in the aftermath of Hurricane Andrew, they were looking for federal help.
But what came first was an outpouring of support from within South Florida, neighbors banding together to get through the crisis. From that, Neighbors for Neighbors was born, changing countless lives since then.
The mission is simple.
Connect those in need with those who can help.
And Neighbors for Neighbors has been doing just that in South Florida for the past 30 years.
I lived through Hurricane Andrew. I lived in Kendall, and I remember, as soon as we got a generator and getting the TV running and then watching literally the inception of this organization, it showed that the power of media is so important to get the message out and what we can do with it. And we've been able to take what was just a relief effort at the time and turn it into a 30-year organization, and that's really special.
These people have nothing left. As much as we can help out, that's what we want to do.
It's a sad way to have to pull a community together, but it has been pulled together.
Back then, it was called Neighbors Helping Neighbors, and a simple phone bank connected those in need with those who could help, thanks to the power of TV and the community's generosity.
I feel that you owe it to your community, and we brought some food down and we brought a check down. How the community is pulling together is great.
After Andrew, Neighbors for Neighbors evolved into a resource for people facing everyday crises, from food insecurity to holiday help.
We're not tied to any one cause, so we're able to step in wherever that need is.
And the need has been great. In 30 years, Neighbors for Neighbors has stepped in with $1 million worth of disaster assistance after Hurricanes Andrew, Harvey, Irma, Maria, and Dorian, and the Haiti earthquakes in 2010 and 2021. Directed more than $1.5 million for COVID relief and recovery, raised more than $310,000 for Surfside building collapse victims, handed out 50,000 backpacks filled with school supplies and uniforms, and made the holidays brighter for 30,000 families with more than $9 million in gifts through its Adopt a Family program.
Neighbors for Neighbors makes it easy to spread joy to families in need.
But none of that would be possible without you, our CBS 4 viewers who continually open your hearts when your neighbors need it most.
Neighbors for Neighbors doesn't exist anywhere else in the country. this partnership between a television station and a nonprofit is absolutely unique. And so many people go, how do you do that? I'm like, well, we're sisters, we're cousins, we're best friends, and we know that this is really powerful and it really works really well. The biggest thing is we're not just here in times of crisis, we're here every day.
I mean, that people do want to help. There are good people out there who want to do what they can. So right here and now, what can people do to help Neighbors for Neighbors, in turn help others?
Right. We can make a difference so easily. People just need the opportunity. They need to know where they can, whether it's financially assist or physically assist by volunteering or donating goods or giving of their time or their talents. I mean, we have that basically whole platform for them to fill that need at any given time, from a small thing to a huge thing like a storm.
This is 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida. When we come back, the unbelievable story of the Zoo Miami flamingos and how they paved the way to protect so many zoo residents today. Welcome back to 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida.
Before we go, a Hurricane Andrew story with a happy ending. Quick thinking by Zoo Miami's Ron McGill saved the lives of dozens of flamingos.
That's right. They rode out Andrew in a zoo bathroom. CBS 4 photojournalist Ralph Murciano takes a look back with him.
This is originally where the flamingos were. It's since been reconstructed to be the Florida Mission Everglades exhibit where we have wading birds. But when the flamingos were in here, we basically had to jump into this pond and we all had to hand grab these flamingos. It was kind of organized chaos. But we would catch up the entire flock of flamingos here and then walk right to our left to the public restroom. Because of the close proximity of these public restrooms to what was then the Flamingo Lake, it was just easy to walk them right across, and we walk right into the bathroom and put them in here. And as we were putting them in, I had a little camera on my hip, and I remember turning around and looking and seeing all these flamingos in the bathroom here, looking at themselves in the mirror, making the noise, and thinking to myself, that's weird. And I just took a couple of pictures of it, just keep on going, never understanding how iconic that photograph would be. If you'll see in the old photograph, the sink went all the way to the wall. It's actually a flamingo, if you look closely, hiding under the sink. And all the other ones are up here against the wall looking at themselves in the mirror. Now this was a perfect place to put these flamingos because first of all, it had no windows. It was a perfect bunker. Tile floors that we could easily clean, put hay on top of. But most importantly, it was a source of fresh water in the toilets. All the flamingos we put in here, they all survived. So in here now is where we're using a holding area for the birds that is specifically for birds. It's not a public restroom any longer. And this is where we can protect the flamingos and other wading birds in case of a storm. So now, having learned from our previous challenges, when there's a hurricane threat, flamingos are moved into this special building made specifically for birds. And as you can see, it has a built-in pool, it's clean walled all around, and this is what will protect them during a storm. As a matter of fact, during Hurricane Irma, this is where the flamingos came. Now, a lot of people would think that none of the flamingos back from Hurricane Andrew are still here, but the fact is, flamingos can live over 50 years. So in fact, we have 8 individuals that lived through Hurricane Andrew that still live here.
Iconic images of an iconic storm. And one thing Andrew taught us is to never discount a hurricane threat, and you can count on us to help you be prepared.
That's going to do it for this CBS News Miami special, 30 years after Andrew, the storm that changed South Florida. Thanks for watching.